Today, there is an estimated 27.6 million victims of human trafficking. 6.3 million alone are victims of sex trafficking. Hello, my name is Jalin Cerillo, and my project focuses on Christians working in anti-human trafficking. So, what is human trafficking? According to the United States Department of Homeland Security, human trafficking involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act. There are two primary groups of human trafficking: sex trafficking and forced labor, which has been understood in the terms of acts, means, and purpose. Acts refers to traffickers who recruit, harbor, transport, provide, obtain, patronize, or solicit another person to engage in commercial sex or labor services by the means of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of a commercial sex act or the exploitation of a person for labor or services. This is how the United States government has defined human trafficking. However, to understand more on a global basis is to look at the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, or the TVPA. The TVPA has created a set of minimum standards to which each country or territory must meet to show significant efforts to do so. Tier 1, with countries such as the US, the United Kingdom, Czech Republic, and Singapore, have governments that fully comply with the TVPA's minimum standards. Countries such as Korea, India, Mexico, and the Central African Republic are in Tier 2, meaning their governments do not comply with the TVPA standards, but they are making significant efforts to do so. The watch list is a subcategory within Tier 2 that display a severe estimated number of victims and forms of trafficking, whether or not they fully comply with the TVPA. Tier 3 includes countries and territories whose governments do not fully comply with the minimum standards and are not making efforts to do so. This tier includes countries such as China, Iran, and Afghanistan. For the project, my interviews led me to focus on 3 specific countries: India, South Korea, and the United States. In India, the most recent data reported a total of 4,709 victims of trafficking, over half of which were female, and just over 2,000 victims under the age of 18. In the United States, there was a total of 13,277 reported victims, where women made up half of the labor trafficking victims and over 80% of the sex trafficking victims. California was identified with the most cases, having just over 5,000 reported victims. The Korean government only reported investigations of at least 64 cases of trafficking due to a lack of reporting. All of these numbers are based only on reported cases or prosecutions through the governments and severely underplay the reality and scope of human trafficking. I remember when I first heard about this horrendous reality. For me, it was one of those things you hear and immediately want to forget. I couldn't fathom that level of evil happening around me or just how easy it is to be exposed to. It wasn't until later in high school when God began to show me that His hand is over these people, that He is working against human trafficking. This project became an opportunity to see how my faith is not something to be hindered by the evil I see, but that through my faith in God, I could have the strength to make a difference, and as was quickly exemplified to me by those I interviewed. If I firmly believe that through God all things are possible, then what's my faith response to that? I need to walk in that faith with the women we work with because He is able. It is not us. These are the words of Max Ferdinand, who through his story demonstrated what it looks like to move in faith. Max is from Mumbai, India, where he currently works as CEO of International Sanctuary, an international organization that partners with women and girls out of trafficking in the transformation of their circumstances by shifting their mindsets and helping them in the pursuit of their education or careers. He told me about a woman who just came to the sanctuary. She just wanted to go to school, so she got a job in the city. She lived in the suburbs outside where she had to walk 2+ hours there and back every single day because she had no other means to get there. She was being taken advantage of by her bosses every single day with no community to protect her in the city. Max can still picture her on the verge of tears explaining her situation, saying, "I just wanted to study." It is stories of victims like hers, women who are taken advantage of or feel they have no choice but to remain in trafficking, that Max knows God has called him to help, to get them out of being trapped. It becomes overwhelming, but he explained that he realized there is so much more we can do for the women instead of focusing on everything that we can't or that we aren't doing. That was the shift in mindset for him. That became his faith response. He knows where God has called him. When he takes that first step, God already has the second. I think it all comes down to saying yes, even to something so scary and something you don't know about when the Lord calls. You can see the fruit of it, the fruit of the yes. Emily Lohman was a freshman in college attending a passion conference in Atlanta when she first heard about human trafficking. Christine Kane was speaking, and little did she know she'd be working with her at A21 for almost 7 years. During her time at A21, she went on all of their international trips and saw firsthand the horrors and redemption of the ministry. She described a sense of being so overwhelmed with the scope of the issue. It's so easy to fall into action paralysis, but she was constantly reminded to focus on the one. She remembers a woman in Greece who briefly escaped her trafficking situation and was trying to bring her trafficker to justice through the judicial system in Greece. This is a very long and drawn-out process, especially working with countries abroad. After many delays and seemingly impossible odds, the person on trial the night before the last trial ended up revealing the name of one of the top guys the police in Greece had been looking for over a decade. This person had trafficked thousands of women and owned over half of the legal brothels in Greece. He ended up being sentenced. By supporting the women in the trial with their one lawyer against his many, by focusing on the one, they got to stop probably hundreds, maybe thousands more girls from getting trafficked into Greece. By saying yes to the one, it was evident the greater impact God had planned. There's a worldly spirit that's proclaiming justice, but there's a biblical spirit that's also proclaiming justice, but in a very different way. As Christians, we need to be able to help the church differentiate between these. Dr. Eddie Boone was a pastor for the international congregation of a large church in Seoul, South Korea. In 2010, he first learned about human trafficking and other similar injustices. His response was immediate action. He knew as a Christian and as a pastor, he needed to do something with his church. God guided him in starting a justice ministry. Within the first few years, they were able to change 15 laws in Korea, 10 regarding trafficking specifically, and the other 5 with orphan and adoption issues as an individual church. With early success, there was immediate backlash as he was witness to so much spiritual warfare. In Korea, prostitution and trafficking as a means of prostitution has a major overlap in the Korean corporate work culture. It is very normal for business, celebration, or transaction to go out for the meal and then afterwards go to a lounge where the menu is basically women. At the start of the ministry, within the church, he had the wives of many CEOs and presidents within his congregation approach him and express their husbands' uncomfortability with the mission and his project. At the same time, an unprecedented amount of favor was recognized in his church's pursuit of justice. CNN covered one of their services for a story on human trafficking. The U.S. Embassy wanted to meet and talk about what was being done on the ground. And even the head pimp of Seoul at one point welcomed Dr. Boone and his team to bring gifts to the women. It was a small gesture of care. These were unprecedented acts and the evidence of God's hand behind stepping out in faith for the pursuit of justice. At the time, Dr. Boone's congregation was the first to step into the arena of social justice and human trafficking in Korea. His story emphasized the importance of justice centered around the gospel. He said it best when he concluded, "You could put every customer, every trafficker, every madam in prison today, but it's not going to solve the issue because at its core, it's a sin issue." And that's why I'm a firm believer that the church needs to be leading the way. Having the privilege to learn from their stories and see how their actions of faith in God's plan and his actions resulted in insurmountable favor and tangible difference was nothing short of encouraging. I was thrilled to take on this project, and I hope to continue writing stories that showcase more of Christ's work like this today. I would love if you guys were able to read their full stories. Thank you so much. I'd love to answer any questions.